Hey everyone, Allie here with West Coast Healer Pack. I've got Callie, Ruger, and Kona here with me. I'm making this video today because I want to give some tips on getting started with paddleboarding with your dogs. There's a few important steps that I like to do with my dogs, and I encourage other people to do with their dogs when they want to start paddleboarding. So here I have the Thurso Surf inflatable paddleboard. This is the Max edition. It's 11 feet 6 inches and it has a weight capacity of 370 pounds. The top has a full traction pad. I really like this board for my dogs and myself because it gives us all the stability. It can carry all of us without us sinking, and the dogs can get the traction with this traction pad all over the board even when it's wet. So really great features to this board. So when I'm starting out with teaching my dogs how to paddleboard, what I will use is something called a wobble board. So this is just like piece of plywood. There's a frame underneath with one of these squishy balls. You could even use a board with a dog bowl flipped upside down underneath. You just want to create something that's an unstable surface that will wobble around like this when the dogs touch it. The reason why I do something like this first is because dogs get spooked when they put their paws on something that isn't stable. I like to use something different from the paddleboard because if a dog has a negative experience where, say, they touch it, it moves, and they get freaked out, we want to work that fear on something like this, not the paddleboard, because otherwise they could have a negative experience with the paddleboard and they might end up being scared of it for a very long time, if ever. So I like to use this, and we can work it on something that isn't associated to the paddleboard. So how we're going to do this is you're going to have something like this, a wobble board, something that's just unstable, like I said, and when your dog goes to it, all they have to do is sniff it. You're going to click and feed them. When they put a paw on it, you'll click and feed. 2 paws, 3 paws, 4 paws. All of those interactions with the wobble board, you're going to click and feed. Once they're getting comfortable with that, you'll ask for simple commands, things that they know really well, like sit, maybe spin, down, shake a paw, whatever your dog knows really well. Don't want to do anything any new behavior onto this wobble board. Also, take your time with this. This doesn't have to happen in one session. It can happen over several sessions. So I'll show you what it's going to look like. Skate, Callie. Right. So as soon as she touches it, click and feed. Right. And I also ask for her to come off of it so she can go right back onto it. I might ask her for a wave. Spin. Good job. Very good. Break. Break. Good job. Break. Cal, go up. Down. Excellent. If you don't have a clicker, you can use a yes marker. It's the same thing as a clicker, but it's a verbal. So as soon as Ruger will show attention to this, I will say yes. Ruger, leave it. Oh, as he's trying to go for my clicker. Ruger, leave it. Come here, bud. Yes, good boy. Yes. And the other thing you want to remember is that when you're doing this, you don't need to lure your dogs. I'm luring him off because he has high value for being on it, but you just need to stand near it, and as soon as they give attention, click or say yes and feed. Okay, so now, when your dog is really comfortable with this, go up, go up, down, excellent. When your dog is really comfortable with this, that's when then you can move to the paddleboard. So we'll put this aside. And what you'll do is you'll work to the paddleboard, and it'll be kind of same concept. As soon as they sniff the paddleboard, you'll click or say yes and give some food. If they put a paw on it, you'll reward. 2 paws, 3 paws, 4 paws. When they're on it and they're comfortably on it, you'll ask for skills like the sit or spin down, whatever it is that your dog is super comfortable doing. And then Kona flies on it. Now, as you can see, my dogs are very comfortable with the board, but if they had never seen it before, they probably would have just sniffed it. They would have sniffed the edges. I would be rewarding that. Then they're seeing that, oh, food comes the closer you are to the board. Trigger, break. Yes. Good. Oh, good man. Yes, good job. Very good, Kona. Hi, good girl. Great. Burger, great. Now, the other thing you're going to want to think about is once you move this onto the water, how do you want your dogs to be positioned while you're on it? So when I'm on the board, I'm going to be standing on it, and preferably I'm going to want Ruger, who's my biggest dog, to be between my legs to have an even distribution of the weight, and Kona and Callie in the front because they're smaller. I typically don't like having the dogs behind me, only because my dogs like to try and bite the water. Sometimes they're very focused on the paddle, so I don't want them doing anything there that I can't see, where maybe they might try and jump into the water. If they're going to jump in, I want to see that and be prepared so I don't go taking into the water. So when you've decided how you want your dogs to be on the paddleboard, what you're going to do is work that. So I will give heavy rewards for him being between my legs. Excellent. And then he'll get even more rewards for being in a down. And then what I like to do is I like to release and start again. Ruger, break. Good job. I dropped some cookies somewhere around here. Yes, good boy. Excellent. And then I'll add the other dogs. Girls, break. Sit. Good job. Now, when we are on the water, it still looks a lot different than this because there's bigger distractions. This we're doing in the backyard, so it's easier for them right now. But on the water, they're focused on everything around. It's exciting being on the water. So when we're out there, Ruger's more typical to stay like this, whereas Kona and Callie will be at the front of the board looking forward. But I still want to work this behavior on land so that when we are out on the water and I say sit or down, they're comfortable and they've really understood sit and down on the board. Back up, down, all the way. Good job. Very good. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is the paddle. My dogs really like trying to bite the paddle. So something else that you're going to want to work on while you're on land is just to pretend to paddle. And see, they're ignoring the paddle. I'm going to reward that. You also want to make sure that you're swinging the paddle over their heads. So anytime that they're not trying to interact with the paddle, reward that. Good job, guys. Now, as you can see, I mentioned, this is the Thurso Surf Max inflatable paddleboard. It's 11 feet 6 inches long, so you can see there's plenty of room for all of us. The great thing has been being out on the water and being able to feel comfortable with all the dogs because they've been used to paddleboarding on other boards before. Transitioning to this one wasn't a problem. If anything, this was a lot better because we weren't sinking. They had better traction on the board. We had more space, so there was just overall better stability. I highly recommend this board. The great thing too is if you live somewhere where you don't have a ton of storage, you just deflate it, fold it up, and it goes right back into a rolling backpack. Pumping it up took about, I'd say 10 minutes, so it really wasn't that bad. And so it was easy to pack around and travel with. Even say you have a car and maybe you don't have a rack system, this is going to be a really great option. Now, when you do get out onto the water with your dogs, a quick thing that you're going to do is say you're on the beach or on the dock, before you put the paddleboard in the water, have them do this with them one more time, just as a quick reminder before you get onto the water. When you do get on the water, you're going to want to put the board in and you're going to want to sit down. This will help you just get yourself situated, get the dogs on. Make sure you have treats with you, something rewarding for your dog. You could use a toy. The only thing with a toy, it might be hard to reward them on the paddleboard. It might make them overly excited. Maybe they're going to want to think or try to jump into the water for the toy. So if you have a food-motivated dog, or just even, yes, good job, and lots of petting, that works too. So that'll all make this experience way better for your dogs. And like I said before, start with a wobble board first, because if your dog has any insecurities about it, you want to work those insecurities on something away from the paddleboard so they don't have any negative associations to the paddleboard. They're gaining their confidence on something different. That'll make your paddleboarding experience much better. It'll end up going along much quicker, because if you have a negative experience to the board, you're going to work a lot longer trying to make this a positive thing for them. So hopefully this helped and you guys will be able to take this and have a great experience and a great paddle on the water with your dogs. I'm Allie with West Coast Healer Pack. This is Callie, Kona, and Ruger, and we're on the Thurso Surf Max inflatable paddleboard.